Hi, my name is Natalie Leger, and I'm going to be presenting on the topic of serotonergic hyperactivity and synesthesia. If you're not familiar with synesthesia, synesthesia is a cognitive condition that is thought to affect 4.4% of the general population. However, as a synesthete, I believe it's more on a sliding scale similar to autism. Synesthesia has an unknown physiological cause, and it's very difficult to study because it's a qualitative, relative, human experience. And this altered state of perception is due to cross-modality and overabundance of cross-modality. And cross-modalities are when different parts of your brain that are responsible for processing your senses are talking to each other. So you start to associate different parts of your senses to things that normally wouldn't be there. We see this a lot in artists and musicians. So there's a lot of different kinds of synesthesia, and it is important to know that synesthesia may well be the key to human learning. And I mean this neurologically in a physiological way. And that is because the way that humans learn and our brains develop when we're attaching associations and meanings to different things in our life, our brains do the exact same thing that synesthetes do. It's that talking between different senses and lots of activity happening where we're attaching associations and a lot of cross-modality is going on. So moving on with that, the supporting endocrinology that says that serotonergic hyperactivity may very well be the causation of synesthesia comes from a lot of studies on synesthesia that have been proposing serotonergic hyperactivity for a long time. And this originally started because in Fmri scans, they saw a lot of excitation. And serotonergic receptors are excitatory receptors in neurotransmitter junctions in both ion channels and GPCR receptors in our brains. So if they're responsible for the excitatory activity in our synapses, then that correlates well with the idea that there's hyperactivity of cross-modality, talking between the synapses in our brain. And 15% of all autistic individuals have synesthesia. So this was an important association that someone made. And eventually they also started to see that high serotonin in the blood samples from autistic patients was also really high. And they also have similar brain activity in fMRI scans to synesthetes. So that got a lot of scientists thinking that there's an association here where we can use autism as a model condition for studying synesthesia, because synesthesia is very difficult to study since it's qualitative. So moving on to our physiology and data, I have two figures here that represent synesthesia in fMRI scans. So in figure 1, you can see that, let me turn the camera on. In figure 1, we can see that the fMRI synthesis and non-synesthete reacting to grapheme and non-grapheme stimuli. There is evidence of cross-modality and overabundance of connectivity here, and this is because we are looking at retinotopic visual areas and grapheme selective brain areas, where there's more of that communication in the synesthete side in both grapheme and non-grapheme stimuli. So even if it's colorful and creative or just blank words, they're still having that cross-modality activity in the brain, whereas with the non-synesthete, we're not getting that with the regular plain black words compared to the interesting, colorful stimuli. In figure 2, this is looking at autistic brains, and on the right side, we see 3 rows or 3 columns of brain scans. And on the leftmost side of the 3B columns is the a healthy control without autism symptoms, and then they progressively get more autistic as we move right. So on the left side, we can see that there's parts of the brain anatomy here that have shown to be responsible for a lot of the cross-modality or retinotopic visual areas that are responsible for synesthesia. And as we see moving to the right of this figure, as we get closer to the autistic brains, they have better formation of these neurological anatomical areas, which goes to show that the autistic individuals have the best development for cross-modal functions and therefore supports the association with synesthesia and autism. Yeah, which is what I said in physiological data. So moving on to what this can do for science and scientific application. First and foremost, it's really important for studying language, art, and how the brain develops during childhood. So if we can understand the cross-modality of synesthesia and its causation, which could potentially be serotonergic hyperactivity, then it would provide us a platform for a lot of both fascinating and critical research for the development of human language, man's neurological relationship with music, art, color, written word, and mathematics, believe it or not, feedback loops and synaptic patterns for memory, as well as savants' biological capacities in a neurological way. So concluding this poster and this primary literature review that I have consolidated here for you guys, we know that there's cross-modal connectivity seen in both synesthetic and autistic Fmri brain scans, and this is very possibly caused by serotonergic hyperactivity seen mainly in autistic brains, since there's more data provided. And serotonergic hyperactivity can then be hypothesized to cause synesthesia in both born synesthetes, induced synesthetes, and individuals with autism. This is supported by blood test results of high serotonin in individuals with autism, hypersensitivity to sensory stimuli in both autistic individuals and synesthetes, hypersensitivity caused by abundance of excitatory synapsing between sensory areas of the brain. So this hypersensitivity is coming from the cross-modality actions that we see in the brain, and this is supported by the serotonergic hyperactivity. So moving on, we know that we can conclude that synesthesia shows potential for both structural and functional causation in correlation with serotonergic hyperactivity. And that is what I'm presenting to you today. Thank you very much.